Hello, TBP family, and welcome to another study with us. Today's topic is How do I overcome this world? And we're glad that you can join us. And please remember that we have a section called the chat box where you can put your questions and comments in. And please like, share, and subscribe to this channel and give us a thumbs up so you can spread the word to those who may need to hear not only this study but previous studies they can go back and watch and subsequent studies to come. Before we go into how do I overcome the world or how do I overcome this world, I will pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here for another study with TBP. And I pray that the viewers will get a blessing from it. Be with Pedro, Colleen, Simon, and myself. And I pray that everything will go smoothly. Thank you for being with us. In Jesus' name, amen. So, Colleen, my dear, how do I overcome in this world? I'm excited to hear your questions. So, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Ruth, and thank you for your introduction as well. So we're looking at how do I overcome in this world. So many people see this world as a battle in which they are placed at birth and in life. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'll start that again. And many people see this world as a battlefield on which they are placed at birth. And life in this condition is a struggle that never ends, but must be won. People have to overcome their issues and challenges however they can. This is the general understanding. For Christians, there is a particular call to be overcomers, not just in general, but in particular. They are called to overcome the dark spiritual forces that work behind the scene of life to destroy lives eternally. This question is, how are we supposed to overcome when we do not even know sometimes what is happening around us? Today, we want to look at this from the biblical perspective. So we'll be focusing on that today, Ruth and Pedro. So I just wanted to kick this off by asking, is it true? Is it true to say that everyone is involved in the spiritual struggle that we Christians talk about? Is this correct?
I will definitely say yes. It is correct to say this. And everyone is involved in this spiritual struggle that we Christians talk about. Now, not everyone may agree with that because they may not be able to recognize the fact, or they could simply decide not to recognize the facts because at the end of the day, we are individuals who are free to choose what we believe and what we live by. So that's perfectly fine. However, there is one thing that we all can agree on, and that is we have all realized that, and I think it's true, it might be one or two who haven't, but we have all realized that life is much larger than any one individual on this planet. And definitely life is larger than me and you. And what we can agree on also is that reality does not change because you choose to ignore it. It's not going to happen. For instance, it's not because you ignore the bill, that you received, that you're not going to end up paying it, and it's not because you ignore the threat to dispossess you of that thing that you haven't paid for, that you're not gonna be dispossessed of it. It's not because you ignore, another example I can take, it's not because you ignore the threats that somebody may have issued against you, than that you're not in danger of being hurt. So ignoring reality does not change it. So, in terms of that spiritual struggle that we are all in, you may ignore it, you may choose to do that, but it does not change the reality of it. So, we should all understand that. And I'd like to say that whether we accept that reality or not, what is involved eventually, and we all know it, is life. Life
Yes.
is at stake. It may be a spiritual struggle, but physical life is at stake in that struggle, as well as, of course, spiritual life for all
Yes.
of us.
Okay. So Pedro, my follow-on question would be then, if that struggle is imposed on us, because no one asks, no one really asks for the struggles that they go through, how reasonable is it to think that we can personally, therefore, decide the outcome?
So, yeah,
Good
that
good
struggle
question
is,
there.
yes, that struggle is definitely imposed on us. And how do we know? The same source that informs us about that struggle being imposed on us also informs us on how it happens and how to manage it. So we're not left without that. And that source, of course, because in your introduction, you spoke about the struggle that the Christians are talking about, that spiritual struggle. So let's
Mm.
go to the source that informs them, or informs us, should I say, of that struggle, in order to answer your question in terms of
Okay.
how to decide of the outcome. Let's go first to Job chapter 14 and verse 1, please.
Okay, reading initially from the King James Version. Man that is born of a woman is of few days and full of trouble. And the American New American Standard Version. Man who is born of woman is short lived and full of turmoil. And the New English Translation. Man born of woman lives but a few days and they are full of trouble. And the New Living Translation. How frail is humanity, how short is life, how full of trouble.
So you look at this picture, you look at the text, usually, a baby
Yeah.
comes into this world, and even the Bible says there is so great a joy, so much joy, that even the pain of bringing that child into the world is instantly forgotten when you hear this
True.
cry of the baby. Now, it is interesting also that the first thing you, not in every case, but the first thing you hear is the cry of of the baby. Although, as I
Mm.
said, I know cases where it wasn't so; it was the opposite. But generally speaking, that's what it is. But it is interesting that the guy who said that, if we look at the text again in the different versions, he says man. So
Mm.
that's not just me, that's not just you. That's the generic term for humanity. He
Yeah.
says, man, if you're ever born of a woman,
Mm.
this is what your situation is. You live just a few days. Yeah? in the first version. In the second version, you short-lived. In the third version, again, just a few days. And the second following that, again, short life. And then he adds in all of them trouble.
Yeah.
The second version, full of
Turmoil.
turmoil. The third version tells you it's like it's the days that are full of troubles. But all the others seem to imply that the trouble is within you when you come into this world. So
Yeah.
Mm.
that reality is supposed to be that of every single person who enters this world through the natural means of being born of a woman. But what is interesting also in this is that the guy who actually makes that statement lived, when he speaks about the shortness of life, he lived longer than any of us on this panel, and I guess in the world at this point, will ever live. Because after his struggle and his reversal of fortune in chapter 42 of Job, we learned that he lived after those days for 140 years. You with me?
Mm.
Yeah.
So this is what he is saying. So although the statement may look very discouraging, it may look very dark, we know that this is real. We know that we all have gone through this. So that's the first source of information, or the
Yes.
first part of the information we have from that source. Let's read another one, another person. Genesis chapter 47, verse 9, please.
Jacob said to Pharaoh, all the years of my travels are 130. All the years of my life have been few and painful. The years of my travels are not as long as those of my ancestors.
So Jacob is responding to a question that Pharaoh is asking him. How old are you? You know, that's a nice, polite question to ask a patriarch. And Jacob is saying to Pharaoh, the days of my trouble, my travels are 130. By that, he means, by travels, he means what he says after that. He repeats the same thing in different way. The years of my life. Although he says 130, he says few. So it's like however long you live, and Job lived longer than him. Job lived 140 years after his trouble, but all the days of Jacob altogether were 147. So it doesn't matter what the number is. He says, the years of my life have been few, and then he adds, painful.
Painful.
So the struggle again seems to be clearly stated here. When you come into this world, things are difficult. Okay, let's take another witness. Let's read from Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 23, please.
I'm reading from the Revised Standard Version. For all his days are full of pain, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night, his mind does not rest. This also is vanity. And the New English translation, for all day long, his work produces pain and frustration, and even at night, his mind cannot relax. This also is futile.
He's talking about man, humanity, who is born of a woman. That means men and women, everyone who shares in humanity. And what is he saying? Is he saying anything different? Now, this guy who said that, Solomon, had everything he ever desired in life, materially speaking. He followed and pursued every dream that he had and probably fulfilled all of them except one: changing the reality of being a human being on this
Yeah.
planet. Apart from that, he had everything. But listen to what he says about the fate of being human on this earth. All right? So, three statements, three different people, but kind of the same thing is being said. Now, I want
Yes.
us to return to the first one, which is who is Job, this time chapter 5 and verse 7, please.
Yet man is born unto trouble as the sparks fly upward. And that's the King James Version. And now the New English translation. But people are born to trouble as surely as the sparks fly upward. The New Living Translation. People are born for trouble as readily as sparks fly up from a fire.
Okay, so the sparks have no, what he's saying here is the sparks have no other choice than just to fly upward. They can't decide that they're going to fly downward. Yeah? And he's saying, as naturally as this happens, that you light a fire and sparks go up, this is as naturally it happens that when you are born into this world, you are born into trouble. I know lots of people spend a lot of time trying to convince most people around them of the contrary of that. But by now, we know that this is an illusion, and sometimes in the minds of these people, it is a delusion. We know that the truth is what these guys are saying. But when we hear statements like this, to come back to what we were saying, when we hear statements like this, we tend to think automatically that these people are talking about the natural challenges of living in this world. We think when we hear statements like this that these guys are just talking about the different socioeconomic, physical challenges that
Emotional.
they meet. Yes, that they meet along the way as in the natural realm. But if you think carefully about them, their socio-economic, cultural, ethnic, and different status in life, they are all saying the same thing. And you can see that these guys were not challenged in many of the things that we naturally think about. Why then are they saying this? They are saying this because they are not talking about the natural realm. They are talking about the realm that is larger than the natural realm. And that larger realm in which we live is the spiritual realm that they were well aware of. And basically, and yes, absolutely. I mean, look at Solomon. He had everything he wanted in life. So why would he be so pessimistic of life? Why? Job, okay, he had a few struggles. He went through a few things. But, he enjoyed life before. We don't know how long the struggle lasted. But he enjoyed life a long time before, to the point that he had 10 grown-up children that he could lose. And after he had his struggle. The Bible says he lived for 140. So
Mm.
I don't know how long he lived altogether, but he had a good time on this planet. Although he had that bad time. And for Jacob, he also had a good time, right? He had
Mm.
his struggles. So basically, what I'm saying is, you realize that these people are not talking just about the natural challenges of living in this world. They are not just talking about the natural realm. They are talking about something beyond that makes more of the reality of life than we care to think about. And that
Mm.
is the
Mm.
spiritual realm. And they are saying that spiritual realm that imposes
Yeah.
itself on the natural world is the real realm in which we are identifying our real condition, which is one of struggling. And they are saying,
Mhm.
we did not initiate that. That is
No.
imposed on us. When we
Yeah.
came into this world, this is what we came up against. This is what is on their minds in what they are saying in those statements.
Mm.
Wow.
Okay. So to go on from that, then Pedro, why do you say that the struggles were mainly spiritual, and what makes you think that we can personally decide the outcomes of these struggles then?
Yeah, in fact, you're right to ask me the question again, because I think that was part of your question and I didn't really address that. Um, but or I address this in part. The first part being, why do I say it's a spiritual one? It's because of what I've just said about how they perceived life to be. But I can elaborate on that. And the second part that I will touch on now, which was also part of your first question or your second question, why do I say that we can decide of the outcome? Well, if we return back to these guys' experiences, we are clearly informed of those two aspects. The fact that it was mainly a spiritual struggle that they were talking about, and that it was imposed on them. That's one fact. The second fact, we are also informed that they actually decided what the outcome would be themselves. Let me
Mm.
submit to your examination three texts, or two rather. Read for me, or a bunch of them. Read for me Job chapter 13, verses 3, 14, and 15, and then Job 19:25. Let's begin with Job.
Okay. But I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to argue with God. Why should I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hands? Though he slay me, I will hope in him. Nevertheless, I will argue my ways before him. And then, for I know that my Redeemer lives, and at least he will stand upon the earth.
Okay, I want you to keep these two texts there for me, please, because I want to go through them with you. If you look at the first one, it is quite clear when Job says, but why would I, why, sorry, he says, but I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to argue with God. He is clearly in this bringing the spiritual dimension of the struggle he is going through in there. Of course, we know at the beginning of the text that there has been a meeting which he doesn't know anything about. But look at how he reacts. I mean, he doesn't know, he doesn't have the minutes, but he seems to know that there is another dimension to what he is just experiencing physically here. So he says, I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to argue with whom?
With God.
With God. So Job understands that this is beyond him and that he must take this to God because that's where it belongs. That's the first thing in this first passage. And then he says, why should I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hands? Basically, why should I mix up things here? Understanding that this thing is beyond me. Why should I take responsibility for what is going on here at a natural level when I understand that it is one level beyond? You with me? And then, so he's saying, I'm not going to fight this thing with natural means because this is not a natural situation. And then he said, notice he says, though he slay me. Yeah. Though he slay me. So that means, although he kills me, I will hope in him. And then he says, nevertheless, I will argue my ways before him. So what is happening there? What is this? He understands that this is a spiritual realm that is permeating his life here like never before.
Yeah.
And is not going to mismatch the response. He is going to go into the spiritual realm in order to address the situation. So this is an active and informed submission to the greater reality of life, which is God. That's what he is doing.
It's true.
That tells
And
us,
Pedro,
if we could, let me just finish this and I'm coming back to you.
Yes.
If we could just pause here, what he is saying is, take your case to God because that is where it belongs to. Even though you see the manifestation of things in the natural world, there is such a connection between the two that your challenge might just belong to the spiritual one. And we know in his case, that is what it was. So he took it to where it belonged. Also, in this text, and that is to your point about deciding the outcome or what the outcome would be, he understands the part of the fight that is his responsibility. He understands that there is a greater realm, but he also understands the part of the fight that is his responsibility, what he is responsible for in it. And that responsibility has to do with his determination and perseverance to submit to God. That's why he says, even if he kills me, yet I will hope in him and I will talk to him. that if that is his responsibility and he doesn't do it, will he not be responsible for an unhappy outcome?
Yes, he
But
will.
if
Absolutely.
absolutely, but if that is his responsibility in the fight, and he takes his responsibility, will he not then decide of an happy outcome for himself in that?
Yes, he
Mm-hmm.
will.
Yes.
So you have, and I'm coming to you, Ruth. So then you have both things here. The first one, from your question, it is imposed in him. It is a spiritual battle, but he's got a part to play in order to decide what the outcome is going to be, and he's going to do just that. I haven't finished. I will come back to the second text with you, but Ruth, go ahead.
No, I was just aware how strong his identity was in Christ, in God, because he lay everything at God's door. And as you said, he had to have his own choice and free will in how he responded to the trials and tribulations that came upon him. And he responded knowing that he couldn't do it without God, without going through it with God. So I just found that quite interesting. You know, sometimes we go through things and it's like we actually blame God. We don't come alongside of them and say, you know what, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. We say, how could you do this to me, God? Da, 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 da. And Job is a great example of how we should not be when trials and tribulations come, because our identity is in Christ, in God.
Yes, thank you for that. And that is true. Now let's go to the second text that you had on this. The second text, if you put it back for me, he says, "For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last, or at last, he will stand upon the earth." Now, we Christians, when we read this, we kind of systematically think of redemption through Christ. And there is
Mm.
nothing wrong with that because it is applicable. However, I want to bring you into Job's mindset here in terms of his responsibility and deciding of the outcome of the struggle, having understood its nature. In the second passage, he uses the word redeemer, but he uses it in his understanding and application of this word in his cultural context at that time. What was that? At that time, if you were in trouble, basically financially, economically, you were in trouble, and um, lots of bad consequences could happen to you, like you would lose, like he did, all your possessions. You know, your closest family would be the first to qualify to rescue you from social and economic eradication or obliteration in that society. They would basically bail you out. They would basically save you from losing everything. But what Job is saying here is not calling upon any family member because he understands
Mm.
that the situation is beyond them.
Mm.
He understands that he's
Yes.
tapping into the spiritual realm, but it still uses the same principle of the closest family, and that is God to him. God is the closest family member, and he decidedly turned to him.
Nice.
Now, this is what overcoming in the spiritual realm, in ultimate reality, looks like. So,
Nice.
the example of Job has made it clear. But it wasn't just Job we talked about. So if we go back to Jacob, for instance, you've heard the expression Jacob's time of trouble. You've heard
Yes.
of it. Where does that come
Mhm.
from? Jacob's time of trouble. And we Christians, we talk about this quite often, but where does that come from? Still trying to answer your question, let's go back to Jacob's example to see if we find the same answers that we found with Job. So let's go to Genesis chapter 32, verses 26 and 30, and then Hosea. I don't know if you can see it. Hosea chapter 12, verse 4, and Genesis 49, 28 and 33, please.
Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." Yes, he wrestled with the angel and won. He wept and pleaded for a blessing from him. Here at Bethel, he met God face to face, and God spoke to him. These are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said as he told his sons goodbye, blessed each one with an appropriate message. When Jacob had finished this charge to his sons, he drew his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and joined his ancestors in death.
All
Okay.
right, thank you for that. And we can contemplate in these texts because they are all related by the
Yes.
very theme that we're talking about. And we're trying to answer the question that you ask about why do I say it's a spiritual thing that is imposed, and if it is imposed, how is it that we can decide of the outcome? Thank you for the way this is disposed here, Simon, because that's really nice. Now, what do we get from that? Those little arrows here are important in connecting these three texts as you look at them. You see, Jacob, he said in the first text, he is in a struggle. That's where we talk about the Jacob's time of trouble, referring to that particular experience that we have here when he was fighting. And later on, the second text says he didn't know that at first, but he was fighting an angel. So what we
Yeah.
see is that Jacob understood that the real struggle of life does not happen in the natural world, but in the spiritual realm. That's where the real struggles of life happen. And that is why, and he did not understand that just there. He constantly and actively looked for a blessing from God much earlier than this. You remember, even when he went the wrong way about it and deceived his brother, who was quite happy to be deceived, really. Jacob always actively looked for a blessing upon his life from God, even if he would do it the wrong way. We know that at the end, he understood how to do it and how to be faithful to God. But the point is, he had understood the order of things. He had understood where the struggles were. That's why he always turned, even in the natural circumstances of life, he always turned towards the spiritual aspect of things. He wanted a blessing. His entire life, he wanted a blessing. And what do we see him doing ultimately at the end of his life? If you put the text back for me. That's why you had the arrows there, Simon. What do we see in the second text? It's the analysis of how it happened, building on the first one. He took responsibility, like Job, to bring this to the level it belonged. And he said, I will not let you go until you bless me.
Bless me.
That, yes, that was his part in the struggle, because he understood. If he had not fought, would he ever have had obtained the blessing he wanted?
No.
No, he wouldn't.
No.
He would not. Therefore, like for Job, he brought it to the level it was supposed to be, and he took the responsibility that was his in that fight. And what was it? Again, his determination to submit until by submitting, he actually held on until. That may sound contradictory, but he was submitting to God. Thank you. He was submitting to God by doing this. And the text says, he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And remember, we talked about seeing God face to face last time. At the end of the second text, which is the first text now, he says, for I have seen God what?
Face to face.
Face to face.
Face to face. You remember what we said last time about this? It's not about individuals having priority in access to God. It's about the depth of the relationship, and that is for everyone. And here again, the expression is used for Jacob, and he says, I have seen God face to face, and my life has been preserved. He's talking about that intimate moment that depended on his determination to bring this to where it belonged and to fulfill his personal responsibility, which was to hold on until he was blessed. And the third text says, yes, at the end of his day, what does he do with his life? Just before he died, what does he do?
He blesses his children.
Okay, what realm is that?
This is a spiritual realm, isn't it?
This is again the spiritual realm. Jacob, his entire life, understood that his children, if you read the blessings, his children may have physical, natural characteristics and so on and so forth, but if he doesn't bring that into the spiritual realm, because that's where much of life happens, it's like it's a waste of time. So he will bless his children sitting on the bed, blesses his children, and then just take a lying position and die. That's what the text says. I don't know if it happened exactly like this, but it may have taken 1 or 2 days to mean he was lying on the bed and he completed that task. This may be that. It doesn't necessarily mean that as soon as he said that, it just died, although it may mean that too. But what is sure is that he died into the spiritual realm until the last of his, because he knew that this is where the outcome is decided, and he had a particular role in deciding what this outcome would be. Like for Job, this is what it looks like to overcome in this world. in tapping into ultimate reality. The
You know,
last
Pedro,
example, yes, go ahead.
I just want to say you made an excellent point there, because you're taking us out of the natural into the spiritual, which is where we really live on a day-to-day basis, but we don't think like that. I was saying to somebody yesterday, I said, we talk about the secular world and the spiritual world, but it's one and the same, because the spirits are at play in our lives. So I think bringing it out like that, to say that Jacob and was it Job and Solomon, they all knew about the spiritual realm, and that's where they were
We haven't got to
operating from to
Solomon
get.
yet.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'll say, well, that's where they were operating from to bring to for them to understand the natural, because I think it's a
Yeah,
really important concept, and I'd love to explore that on another live, actually, because I think it's deeper than what we're going in here.
yeah. Let's finish this one first, and then we'll see.
Okay. All
So,
right.
so thank you for this point, and this is exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help us understand that there is a larger reality which these people knew about, which is not
Mm,
the one we are usually focusing on, but another one which is the spiritual one. And that's the
yeah.
Yeah.
first question was that we are all facing that spiritual struggle, but it's just that some of us don't recognize it. But it doesn't
Yeah.
change the reality, as we said at the beginning. So now we've seen the example of Job, we've seen the example of Jacob and JJ. Now let's look at Solomon's example.
Um,
Let's see, if we go back to him, what he is saying. And I can tell you already that we will see the same things, because this guy, as we said at the beginning, he had every single thing his heart ever desired, whether
Yes, he
right
did.
or wrong. He did it both. He went both way, wisdom and folly. He himself says he had everything most men would want,
or dream of. Mm.
or dream of. They like to tell you about how many women he had. This part the men like, but what is he saying? What is he
Yeah.
saying about having 1,000 different women? What is he saying about having all his dreams fulfilled? What is he saying about snapping his finger and people just bring everything under the sun that he desires? What does he say about all of this in the end? Let's
Mm.
look. Let's look at Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 13, and then Ecclesiastes together, 12, 1 and 13 and 14, please.
So I'll start off reading from the Revised Standard Version. And I applied my mind to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the sons of men to be busy with. Don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor Him in your youth before you grow old and say, life is not pleasant anymore. That's the whole story. Here now is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey His commands, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, whether good or bad.
Now,
Mm.
I don't know if you heard that, but that's what he is saying in the end. And I want you to keep this there, because if that is what he says, this man who had everything anyone could desire, if that is what he said in the end, then we
Yeah.
really need to pay attention to what he is saying. Because you see, for Solomon, and keep the text there, for Solomon, when he says in the first text, and I applied my mind to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. And then the second part of that is, it is an unhappy business that God has given to the sons of men to be busy with. That sounds so pessimistic. And it
Yeah.
Yes, it
reminds us,
does. Yeah.
it reminds us of what we read at the beginning, but it should also remind us of the experiences that we are having on this earth ourselves, if
Mm.
we care to be honest. So for
Yeah. True.
Solomon, the situation is both tragic and hopeful, because although it is what it is, like some would say, in terms of what is happening to you physically in this world, you can choose how it all ends. If you look at what he is saying in the second text, he says what? Do not let excitement of youth cause
Mm-hmm.
you to forget your creator. Whose
Yeah.
responsibility is it to take it
Uh,
to the right level to which it belongs?
it's our
By
own.
that statement,
It's our
it's
own.
your responsibility. And you see,
Mm.
he is not talking about the lawyer that you're going to see. He's not talking about the doctor that you're going to see. He's not talking about uh, any of these things. He says, your creator. That is the spiritual realm while you're living in the natural one. He says, do not forget him. That's your responsibility. Then he says there is a particular time at which you need to do that. And that is as
Mm.
early as you can. That is your responsibility.
Yes.
And he's only saying this because he believes that you are in charge of the outcome of the situation that he is describing in the first text,
Yeah.
which we said
Apply.
looks
Apply.
very, very terrible. Didn't we say that?
It
Yes, we
did.
did.
So if you look at the spiritual aspect that is behind it all in this life, he is saying, then you will know
Mm.
how to end it. And he ends it with, look, at the end of the day, let me tell you this. That's the man who had everything you could ever ask for. He said, listen,
Mm.
in this life, if you were to know one thing, that is spiritual reality is more important than anything else.
True.
Whatever it is that you're doing in life, in fact, your life happens there. That's why he says that God will judge you for everything, and it is your duty in life to care for God, because ultimately,
Mm.
that is where everything happens. So, with Solomon as well, we recognize and we see that this is what overcoming in this world looks like ultimately.
Okay.
That you understand the spiritual reality and you
Yes.
take the personal responsibility that will allow you to decide your own outcome in it.
Mm. That was excellent.
Thank you for that, Pedro. But I just have one final question. I just want to ask this final point. Why would the idea of overcoming, therefore, be so important? And how does that help us both now and in the end?
Okay. So, first of all, you need to understand if we look at what these people have said, and we go back to the question when you ask, how do we know? And I said the same source that tells you that this is imposed on you also tells you how you decide of the outcome. So first of all, what we retain from that is that you need to understand that the challenging situations that you find yourself in do not just happen to you, and they are
Mm.
not an end in themselves. That means behind those situations that happen to you in the natural world, there is something that creates them with a
Yeah.
particular aim. And unless you grasp that, you will not be able to make the right choices so that you get the right outcomes. So it is when you realize that, when you understand that, you are better equipped to grasp what is happening and where what is happening around you, what is
Yeah.
happening within you, what is happening to you, and where
Mm.
this is going. And of course,
Mm.
if you have an answer or an understanding of all these things, this is
Mm.
very helpful, isn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hmm.
Okay. The fact of the brutality of life
Mm.
is due to the underlying
Mm.
spiritual powers that move and shake
Yes.
the
Hmm.
natural world. And if you're in a fight, let's say,
Yeah.
and the sun is behind the person you're fighting with, where will the shadow of that person be?
Behind them.
No, the sun is behind
Behind
that
you.
person. The
Oh, the
shadow
sun's
will
Behind
be on
behind
you.
you.
them. It'd be at. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
shadow will be on you. Will that make any sense that you fighting with the shadow and you letting
No.
the real person go?
No.
No.
What's going to happen to you?
Mm.
If you fight
For
with
the
the
You're
sake
not
of
shadow,
going to
time,
be you're not going to be successful in your fight.
not
you're
at all.
definitely not going to be successful. That person will just come and
Mm.
do whatever that person wants to do to you because you're busy
Yeah.
fighting the shadow and you
Mm.
ignore the reality, which is what we said.
Yeah.
In
Yes.
the end, it's not going to go well for you. So,
Mm.
when you engage in life only by looking at the shadow, which is the natural world, and you're not
Mm.
looking at the reality, you are fighting the wrong fight. And you
Yes.
Mm.
need to
Yes.
understand that the fact of the
Yes.
brutality of life is due to the spiritual reality that underlies this life and that seeks to do damage.
Yeah.
Mm.
And although you cannot see it with your eyes, do not
It's
ignore
there.
it because
It's
it's
there.
not everything you see that is real. And
Mm.
Mm.
it's not everything you don't see that is not real, like wind, for instance. That's
Mm.
the
Hmm.
first thing. The second thing is understanding that this is not just you in this struggle.
Mm.
Because sometimes
Yeah.
feeling isolated in a circumstance or a
Mm.
situation makes it feel much worse for
Yes,
us.
it does.
Now
Yes.
understand from what we're saying that this struggle is imposed on humanity. Everyone who is born of a woman on this planet.
Mm.
People are just good at masking what is going on and what is happening with them. That's why they
Yes.
invented makeup. You don't know what is under this makeup. You don't know what
That's
is there. I'm
true.
not knocking makeup. I'm just talking about its function. Its function
Mm.
is to mask.
Yeah.
You with me? So
Mm.
you need to know that this is not happening just to you.
Mm.
And if that is the case, you in good company with everyone who is around you, particularly your brothers and sisters who are going through the same things, not
Yeah.
necessarily in terms of items, but in terms of reality of
Mm.
fighting.
Yes.
Now,
Mm.
to finish quickly, we'll be on time now. We often talk about Bible promises, right?
Mm.
To answer your question, I've got one promise, one Bible promise for you, one really in two texts, Bible promise for you today. Would you please read for me 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 12 and Revelation 3 verse 21, please?
If we endure, we shall also reign with him. If we deny him, he also will deny us. And that's Revised Standard Version, now the New American Standard Version. The one who overcomes, I will grant him to sit with me on my throne. So I also overcame and sat with my Father on his throne.
So keep these texts here for me and let me show you again that in these texts are what we saw all through this discussion today. The first text says, if we endure, whose responsibility is it to endure?
It's
Our own.
ours.
Okay. What realm is this when it says, we shall also reign with him?
The spiritual,
Spiritual.
the
Okay,
heavenly
so
realm.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So that promise will work only if you recognize those two aspects which we talked about. The spiritual realm being the most important, the larger, the most permeating realm in your life. And secondly, your responsibility, like Job, like Jacob, like which was the other one? Solomon,
Solomon.
yeah, at least in the advice that he gave, your responsibility to do what it takes to get the outcome that is the best for you. And the Bible has already said that to you. So that's the first text. So, and I'm coming to the second one. You may be tossed about by the challenges of the natural world and be able to do and not be able to do much about it. But in the real fight, it's about whether or not you are going to endure. And if you endure, then the second text says, the one, and that is you or anyone else, who overcomes. So, how do I overcome in this world? We've just spent the last hour saying how. And we summarized it just now. Endure, recognize, and take responsibility. The one who overcomes, I will grant what? Finish it for me, please.
To him to sit with me on my throne.
And then
Also,
read the whole thing.
as I also overcame and sat with my Father on his throne.
Okay. Now, in these two texts, this is the final message. The promise is sure.
Yeah.
If you do this, this is what's going to happen. If you endure, this is what's going to happen. If you deny, this is what's going to happen. But if you endure, you have overcome. You will
Yes.
overcome. And you will sit on a heavenly throne like Jesus overcame and sat
Yeah.
on a heavenly throne. Is that a small promise?
No, it's not.
No, it's massive.
Yet, this promise is left up to you to decide whether it
Mm.
is going to be your reality or not.
Mm-hmm.
But let me leave you with that thought. Nobody else can decide that you're not going to sit on that throne
Mm,
than you.
yes.
Yeah.
Nobody else is habilitated, authorized, permitted, not even God to some extent. And I'm saying this reverently. You know why?
Yeah.
Because he's already made the promise that if you overcome, this is what he can't tell you, no, you can't sit there.
Mm-hmm.
So that means there is no reason. And don't get me wrong, you're not going to, you know, storm into heaven and storm into the kingdom and demand your place. That's not what I'm saying. Everything is by grace. What I'm saying,
Yeah.
this text is making the point that you are the one who decides what happens to you. In all the trouble that you live on this earth, eventually. And the good news is, everybody will win because that's God's plan if
Mm-hmm.
they do what God tells them to do.
Obedience. Yeah. So
Mm,
obedience is
yes.
the key. And we can use the obedience to endure. Pedro, thank you for that wonderful, wonderful study as always. Nicole, thank you for your lovely comments. I like how you said mercy. What a word this has been. Praise God. So thanks for the encouragement. It's always good to get those encouraging comments in our chat. And remember, this is where it comes from. You can endure. This is a book of endurance. There's no reason why we cannot endure because we have the blueprint for it. So get into your word, study it, and then you come back and let us know in the chat how you found the study for this week. So please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And that notification bell, please press it so you're notified every week that when we come live. And more importantly, give us a thumbs up because it helps the algorithm to send this channel out to people who would not know about it. So Pedro and Colleen and Simon, thank you very much. And our viewers, thank you too for joining us. See you again next time for another study with TBP, the Biblical Perspective channel. Bye-bye.
What is REBU, the Research Institute for Biblical Understanding, a learning and training center for all those who want a deeper, stronger, clearer, and more informed understanding of the Bible in all its various and important aspects. It's there to develop and equip you with proper skills in the field of biblical studies. Regardless of where you're at now, Reba will take you further on that journey to reach your full potential in understanding the Bible. We are now in the process of registering people for the different plans and programs that Rebu offers. Wherever you are in the world, Rebu is there for you.